These are the commandments and ordinances that the Lord commanded through Moses to the Israelites in the plains of Moab by the Jordan at Jericho. There we go. Now, did you get all that? Oh, were you talking to me? Yes, I was telling you everything that you needed to know before you entered the promised land. Weren't you paying attention? I may have drifted off a couple of times, if I'm completely honest. Could you just give me the main headlines again, maybe? Have you ever tried to tell somebody something and not been completely sure that they're listening? Well, if you have, then you may have some sympathy with Moses in the book of Deuteronomy. For the last 40 years or so, as we've read in the books of Exodus, Leviticus, and lastly Numbers, Moses has been trying to prepare the people of God for their new life in the promised land. He's been telling them all the laws they need to observe, the festivals they should remember, and how they should lead their life. But it's not always been clear that they've been paying attention. And in Deuteronomy, we find essentially a recapitulation of much that has gone before. And the very name Deuteronomy tells us that. We use in English the Greek term Deuteronomos, second law or second law giving. So in some senses, it's just a repetition of what has gone before. But it's much more than that. In Hebrew, the book is called the Book of Words, a name taken from the first verse or so of the Bible, the Book of the Words of Moses. And it's not just a repetition, because these are the last words of Moses. Moses has been told, as we've read before, that he himself will not enter the promised land. And he is about to die, and at the end of Deuteronomy, spoiler alert, Moses is buried after being given a brief glimpse of the promised land to which he's been leading the people for so long. And so this is Moses' last chance to prepare these troublesome people who he's been leading for what is to come. And in Deuteronomy, he lays down again all the things they need to remember and the things they need to observe, all the laws, all the things that they should be doing. And Moses is not going to be there, he's telling them. He's not going to be their guide. So they will need this book, these words of the law. And we often talk about Deuteronomy in these first 5 books as being books of the law. And that is true, but it's more than that. It's a book of the covenant. And this is how Deuteronomy is often referred to later in the Old Testament. It's a book about relationship, as so much of the Bible is. It's a book about the relationship between God and God's people and about the choices that God's people make. And a great deal, and we may struggle to see this, a great deal of it is about love. It's about loving God and God in return loving God's people and therefore us loving our neighbours as ourselves. And there, within this love, within this law, there is choice. And the very last words of Moses almost, we find at the end of the book, very famous words, "I set before you life and death. Choose life," says Moses. And within these words, within this book, we find that choice of living in a covenant relationship with God, or of rejecting that and living in enmity to God and God's people. And Deuteronomy is a really significant book. We will recognize a lot of the material, but it is a really significant book in its own right. And it comes at a pivot point, we might say, within the Old Testament. And we often put Deuteronomy with the first 5 books of the Bible, the books we've worked our way through in the last few months, sometimes referred to as the Pentateuch, meaning the first 5, or the books of the law, books of the Torah. And that's true, because a lot of Deuteronomy relates to what's gone before, and it's all about Moses and it's all about the people of God. But it also sets up what is to come next in books like Joshua and Judges and Samuel. It's pointing forward to the new life that is coming in the promised land, because finally the people are going to enter their own land and they're going to live in accord with God's commandments. And it's significant. So it's significant throughout the Old Testament, and we really need to understand Deuteronomy and its author if we're to understand what comes next. And we'll talk a bit more about its author in another video probably. But it's really significant for the rest of our Bible as well. We know that Deuteronomy was one of the most significant books, most important books for Jesus's contemporaries. It's one of the books that we find most often at Qumran with the Dead Sea Scrolls. And it's probably the most quoted book in the Gospels. And Jesus quotes Deuteronomy at really key moments in his life and ministry. So, for example, when he's asked, what is the greatest commandment? Jesus quotes directly from Deuteronomy, quoting the Shema, something that faithful Jews still recite every day. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, and with all your spirit. When Jesus is tempted in the wilderness by Satan, how does he respond? He responds by quoting Deuteronomy 3 times. And when he talks about love and loving God and neighbour, he is quoting both Leviticus and Deuteronomy. So we can see that this is a really important book. It's a book about covenant, it's about love, it's about living in relationship with God, and it's setting us up for all that is to come ahead. So I hope that you will be able to make some sense of some of these links and able to engage with this fascinating book. So, do you think you've got it this time, eh? What? Just read Deuteronomy, will you?